Hey, welcome to Conscious Conversations. Now, have you ever thought about managing your energy and not just managing your time? And if we managed our energy better, how much better we could be. Because that for me, I remember reading the book, The Powerful Engagement around energy management, and it changed my life. It was crazy around, our food, our exercise, our environments, our relationships are all energy. And if we can manage our energy really well, we can use our energy better in the time that we've got because time is fixed. We don't get any more time or any less time, but our energy is fluid. So, it really got me on a journey of energy, of understanding energy better. And quantum physics talks a lot about this. And, the model that I'm working on at the moment called Live Connected, around living connected to your authentic best self, does this. So today, I've got an awesome episode with Miranda Mitchell. And Miranda talks about what's called the quantum alignment system. And it's around being aligned, to your energy basically, and living more connected to yourself. And I really love this. And I love that we get deep into transformation, connection to ourselves, and just being more authentic. And be more of us, because I think it's so needed. It's needed more than ever right now, is this understanding of self. So today is an awesome episode. It's a great episode. But before we get into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. I've got another podcast, a little side podcast called Holistic Growth. And what holistic growth is it's like between 5 and 10 minute hits of talks, of meditations, of practices, of quotes that I share daily. And I'm going to try to really commit to doing this daily. That what I want the audience to do, what I'd love for you to do is follow that, is subscribe to it, get it into your feeds, into your downloads. And before opening the phone, before starting scrolling, just simply put the earphones in and listen to this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes every day to start the day. I'm really using it as a tool for people to start the day with intention. So that's my other podcast called Holistic Growth. If you're wanting to do a little bit more work with me as a coach, it's just lukemclean.net, and you can check out the work that I'm doing there. So that's just the housekeeping. I'm just going to keep that really simple, but I really can't wait to introduce this podcast with Miranda Mitchell. We're going to talk all things spirituality, all things energy, all things wellness, and just a really good energy pickup. Get yourself into the groove, understand yourself a little bit better, and I can't wait for it. So this is Conscious Conversations. My name's Luke McLean, and this is Miranda Mitchell. Just reading a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to. There seems to be a real flow in the work that you do and how you live around energy, around yoga, around connection. But I was really interested as to, for you getting into that, where did that come from, or where did that start in your life?
Oh, well, that's kind of a long story. It feels like my entire life was a journey to learn that and integrate that. So, I don't know. When I was younger, I wasn't really connected with myself. I kind of moved from one place to another. I lived up in Vermont with a huge family. There's a lot of us, so we didn't have a lot growing up, and at times we would not have electricity. We didn't have hot water. My parents liked to live off grid, but it wasn't to live off grid. It was because of not having enough money.
Right.
So when I say that I had to walk a mile to catch the bus, I'm not exaggerating. We lived way out in the boondocks. There was, 6 of us kids that were there, and I'm the oldest. So that being said, I didn't have a lot of emotional support because there were so many of us, So I didn't really feel a great connection with my mother. And my father is my stepdad. He did adopt me. So he is my father, but he's not my biological father. And he was there basically for support. He wasn't there emotionally either. So I didn't have a lot of emotional support when I was younger. And then when I was 14, I actually decided to move out of my house. So I moved out of the house and basically lived with friends. And I wanted to have stability in this, but I was 14. So there was not stability. I was going out. I was partying. I wasn't focused on school. It was just an endless cycle of non-security, I guess. And it really continued until I was older. And then I had my first child. And that's when I started reflecting and noticing, okay, I don't remember a lot of my life when I was younger. I don't have any memories, any keepsakes or anything from when I was younger. And I wanted to have that for my kids. So one of my goals was to have the stability for my kids and be there emotionally and support them in their teenage years. Because with my mom, she didn't support any of us in our teenage years. All of us didn't really have support from age 14 on. We're basically on our own. So I really wanted that for my kids. And it was important for me to really give that to them. So what happened is I started focusing on myself. I started really practicing consistency in certain things, being there for them. I had my first son when I was not married. And when I did marry, I chose someone that said that he would take care of me. And I should have known right from the beginning that that wasn't a good thing. So I had a 6-year marriage that was really abusive, really controlling, and it took everything that I had to prepare to get out. So it took me about a year to get out safely with my 2 sons I had at that point. And then from there, that's when this journey started. I started personal training and working on my body for strength. And then I moved into yoga. And yoga was a beautiful gift, but it was also very scary because it was teaching me about vulnerability, and I'd had to be strong my entire life. So for me to go into yoga and let myself be vulnerable was one of the hardest things that I had ever done. And then since then, that's when all the growth has happened, with reflecting on my past and forgiving myself for some of the choices I did, and forgiving my parents for not being there as I wish they had been, and really diving into what I'm here for and how I want to help others within their stories so that they can really create the life that they really want to be living, and letting go of some of the things that are not true for them anymore, that no longer serve them.
Yeah. Wow, Miranda, like that's, it's a really, it feels, when I listen to that, it feels like you've really connected to that story, and
Mhm.
you sort of, you say it in a way that, there is obviously, what I heard was was immense hardship, as when you were young, and, probably didn't have that support growing up that you really needed, or now know that you needed so much, and wanting to give to others, but can using, yoga, and using that self-work, using the ability to make peace with that part of your life, and actually almost, it sounds like, seeing it as the foundation for who you are now.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because um, I did numerous years of yoga practices. Probably about 8 years. I had 2 teachers. One was helping me with vulnerability and opening up. And then after I chose a teacher that was really hard on me, because I knew that I was strong minded and I needed to be pushed to break through these patterns and these thoughts. So my other teacher, Krista Shirley, she was very strict and very hard on me, but I so appreciate that. And I always knew somewhere deep inside that all of this was for a reason. I always knew somehow that the struggles in my life, my choices, it was for some reason. And then when I stumbled upon human design, I had my chart reading and I looked at the gates. And one of the gates that is activated and is a huge theme in my life is actually the theme of a challenge, the theme of struggle, and the theme of adventure if you want to say it in a nicer way. So when I saw this, and I saw in my chart that this was my story, this was what I was here to learn, this is what my soul was here to learn to choose the right challenges and then take what I learned from that to help others. So when I learned that, it was like, I've known this so long, but now it's right here and I see it. And it was just so grounding. And I was so thankful because, sometimes when you think these things, you think, okay, is this just all in my head? Am I making this up? Is this just me being positive? Because my sister always told me I was ridiculously over positive and it bugged her. So I thought maybe I was just making it up, And then when I saw this, I'm like, no, this is exactly what I'm here to do. And the struggles were for a reason. So I was so thankful, and I would not change anything. When anyone asks me, like, would you ever get married to him again? Would you ever? And my answer is yes, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that I've been able to see the blessing in all of the challenge, and I'm able to be here to help people do that as well.
Yeah. And I love what you sort of said around that, Miranda, was that sort of ability to start with yourself first, like not just. And I feel like sometimes, especially as a coach, like sometimes people, especially parents, want to start with their children first and not feel like they want to look in the mirror themselves and realize that no, it starts with me. That relationship to myself is the starting point for all of this. Then it's sort of the easy steps to try to fix someone else or fix the relationship of someone else rather than wanting to go inside and do that inner work.
I love that. And that's interesting that you say that, because that is one of the things that I always say. And I feel it's easier to start with yourself rather than anyone else, because we can't control how other people's emotions or reactions are. We don't know their story. We don't know their experiences. We don't know their beliefs. But I do know that when you work on yourself and you forgive yourself and you accept yourself, regardless of anything that you've done or anything that you believe about yourself, your vibration, first of all, raises. And you not only create a higher frequency for yourself, but you actually create a higher frequency for the people that are surround you. So you're not only healing yourself, but you're actually healing others. And you're doing this from a place of self-reflection, self-study, self-work. It's so hard to tell other people or to ask other people to look within themselves when they're not ready. But when you're doing the work and they see you do that and they feel that, then they are more open to do that as well. At least that's what I've learned from my experience. So anytime there's a struggle externally with someone, I try to look within myself to see what's going on. What am I doing, or what is my belief about this person? What am I mirroring and reflecting in this relationship? And when I can do that, things can change because I'm doing my own work. It has nothing to do with them. I can't force them to do anything.
And yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with that, Miranda. And I think it's almost like one of the key parts around self-work is to realize that. But, especially being a man, and I think for a lot of men, they struggle with that relationship with self. But I'm wondering whether you now have those insights because of the amount of work you've done, and whether back in the day when things were a struggle, whether you were willing to go to that relationship to self first, or whether it was a projection onto others first.
Oh, when I was younger, it was definitely a projection.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely was. I think that's why after my marriage, I was so cold. And I didn't know I was cold until, like I mentioned, I was a personal trainer. Someone in the gym, I overheard them, and they called me the ice princess. And I was like, oh, that is not what I want to be seen as. Like, am I cold? And the reason I was is because I had built these walls up so much around me to protect myself from being vulnerable, from losing my cool, I guess. I had to raise two boys on my own. I
Yeah.
had to be strong. I had to, you know? And when they said that, I was like, oh, and that's when I started yoga because I knew that is not what I wanted. I needed to break those walls down and let myself, I call it the messy, like let myself get messy, let myself be emotional, let myself cry, let myself receive help. Like even my family, because I still am in contact with all my family, all my brothers and sisters, they never offered to support me because I never asked for it. And the
Yeah.
minute I asked them, they had no idea what to do because they're like, who is this person? She's never needed support before.
Mm.
So for me to break down into vulnerability or anyone to break down into vulnerability, it can be very scary. And people at first, they may not recognize you or even know what to do because they're not used to that. So that can be a struggle as well, like starting that new relationship um, with
And,
letting.
and you and you might like when you go through that, and I went through something similar, Miranda, where you might have to, you know, compost or get rid of some old friends and beliefs and stories that people have about you might have to really change, and that can be quite challenging in relationships because there's such a belief on that's who Miranda is, that's what she does, and I like that person because I'm comfortable with them, and sometimes there's a bit of letting go, but it's like that Buddhist saying around, you need death to have rebirth. You need to sometimes let go of some of that stuff before the new stuff can come in.
Yes, yes. And that is actually something that I actually bring into my awareness sometimes about that death and rebirth because we as a society are afraid or we're fearful of death.
Yeah,
And
we are.
yoga, really, shavasana and corpse pose is practicing for that experience and letting go. Um,
Mm.
so it's just very interesting because some people, they will talk about death, and they'll talk about how if you hold on and resist what is happening, that is how it becomes really hard and struggle, and you don't like pass away peacefully. Whereas if you practice death or releasing throughout your life, like releasing as you're a woman, as you're going into womanhood, or releasing being single when you get married, so you're no longer single, releasing that person and becoming this new person. With each step, letting yourself release that and let that part die so that you can step into something new. And it is all a practice in letting go for when the time is there, when it's your time to pass. Are you going to be able to release gracefully and peacefully and fulfilled, or are you going to grasp and hold on to the material world?
Mm. Yeah, and I think, Miranda, we've got that opportunity to practice that in so many moments, whether it's with work that you might finish with a client, or it might be around the kids growing up, and there's the not the death, but there's the letting go of the children when they're 5 or 6 and they're coming into 8, 9s, 10s, and then they become teenagers. There's a letting go to allow that new version of that child in. So I think we get these practices right throughout our life to be able to allow that the death of something or the letting go of something to allow the acceptance of something else. And I'm with you 100%. It sets us up bigger for that bigger moment, or those bigger moments that we need to let go of or allow in.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you said that as well because my boys now are older, so
Mm.
both of my sons have like my one son lives on his own. He has his job, he has his girlfriend. My other son just left for the Air Force, and I was able to like release that. I was able to say,
Mm.
okay, this part is done. Now you're able to go and create your life. Like, what are you going to do now? And a lot of people have asked me, like, do you miss them? Do you like struggle with that? And I do miss them. It feels different, but I'm excited for them because, first of all, I'm very excited because I made it through. I
Yeah,
raised
yeah,
two
yeah. Yep.
boys. And they're both very different. and they both are out in the world working, creating, building. Like I did that. And I'm also very excited for them because I believe in them. I see the independence, I see the strength in them, and it excites me. Especially since my family didn't have that. We moved out when we were 14, and now my kids are 25 and 22, and they're out and they're creating the life, and they've had me there to support them. So it's really a beautiful experience that I was able to do that. And I feel like I've healed a little bit of my karma or my ancestral karma because I was able to do that with my kids because my mom was not able to do that with me or my brothers and sisters. And honestly, my mom's mom, my grandmother, my mom moved out when she was 16. So
Yeah.
there's a pattern there,
Yeah, and you've sort of, what you've done is you've sort of shifted or snapped or moved that generation now, and hopefully that becomes the new way of living within your family and within, that life cycle now, and I think that's really, and you talk about this in even littler parts around, abusive families or alcoholism or these things that happen in families that are generational, that when you can be that person that can stop those toxic behaviors and create a new story or a new narrative for those families that, most likely, in the studies show, will pass on to generations from there.
Yeah, it's very grounding, and it's also very empowering, And I will say I did, because they were witness to a lot of the abuse. So I was nervous about them as being men going out into the world, seeing the abuse that they saw. But I've been very open with them. If you ever feel like you want to do this, come talk to me, So we're very open in communication. And my youngest son was, it really made, because I did struggle with my youngest son a little bit. We had a little bit of struggle. And when I had mentioned that about his father, and he's just like, well, awareness is key. And I was just like, okay, yes, like he's got it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I wanted to talk and get into this a little bit because I think we started really strong, and I wanted to talk to you, especially around today's environment, and we'll get into the quantum human design because I think that's really exciting. But I wanted just to talk to you about energy, and this idea around vibration, which you mentioned before, because I'm huge on this. That we are basically these balls of energy that we show up every day and we give energy and we receive energy. But I'd love to get someone that specializes in this to really talk about the importance and when we can reframe our lives to think more energetically and to behave more energetically, like what does that mean?
Yeah, so I always believed in the energy, and like with yoga, with pranayama, breath work. That's one of my favorite practices. The chakras. So I always did the traditional practices beforehand, as far as energy and the subtle energies in your body, the breath, how important the breath is. And then when I did the quantum human design training, and went even deeper into the connection of the energy of the heart and the magnetism that we have in the heart, and the way that we love ourselves, see ourselves, think about ourselves, believe about ourselves. That energy right there is the energy that will create the vibration that you either both attract and give out. So if there is self-doubt or self-worth or lack of belief, the energy is a lower frequency. So that is the things that you're going to attract. And that's where the law of attraction is, right? So you attract those types of things, that frequency to you. But when you learn your human design chart and you see what energies you have defined, I'm not sure what you know about human design, but there is the centers. And in the centers, there's some definition, which means colored in. And then there's some centers and gates that are white, which are open. So what that means is anywhere there's colored in areas in the chart, that's where there's definition, consistency. So that is where you have some consistency in your beliefs, consistency in your chakra, consistency in your identity. So anywhere that is open is variability. And what that means is we don't have consistency there. We're able to take in other people's energies that surround us and amplify them. And we get to experience those emotions, feelings, thoughts from those energies. And what happens is we get to choose which energy we want to be vibrating or which energy we want to be feeling. So I'm going to give an example about the heart. The G center is called in quantum human design. And this is the space of the identity. So this is where self-love is, self-worth, who you are, what you bring into this world, what you attract, what energy you put out there. And when I was younger, I had always struggled with who I was. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I was here. I didn't know if I should be here. I had no purpose. I acted differently around different people. And because of that, I didn't understand who I was. Like I was just this person that would morph into this different identity around different people. And when I realized and saw in my chart that my G center is actually open, that means I take in other people's energy and amplify it. That is why I was experiencing different identities, because I was taking in their energy, amplifying it, and thinking it was me. But it wasn't me. It was just me experiencing life through the identity of them. So I'm not sure if that's too much, if you understand what that means.
I'm sort of like, I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, but it's like you see a lot of people, and I work with some people that are like real empaths. So they just take on everyone's energy, and it really affects them a lot. Like if someone's suffering, they're going to take on and carry that suffering. And I see that a lot, and wondering if that's similar.
Yes. And that might mean that they're very open. So that may mean that the centers are very open. So the spleen, if that spleen center is open, they can definitely feel like they can feel how other people feel in their body. They may get sick around other people. If the other people are sick, like they take on that energy. And then the G center, if you can take on that identity. And as a coach, actually, now I realize that open G is a gift, because now when I coach, I can I become them. I'm on their map. I see them for where they're at. And then because I know it's not my energy, as soon as it's done, I let it go.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And how do you then, Miranda, like someone that's not a coach and someone that doesn't see that as a gift yet and doesn't know what to do with it, like if someone is feeling that, like what are some things that you could suggest would be steps for someone?
Well, if there's something that's definitely interesting to them as far as learning your energy, definitely get your chart done. You can I run charts for free on my website. So definitely get your chart done and look to see which energies you have open and which you have defined. And then once you know that, it goes back to the self-reflection, like noticing how you feel around other people and not making it about yourself, but noticing, oh, this must be their energy. This is not me, So it's all about awareness of where you take in energy and where you are consistently and defined. That's the first step. Then self-reflection, like either through breath work practice, or I love journaling. I journal a ton. And I'm also a huge advocate for, like I said, breath work and sitting in silence, connecting with what is you and what is not you. And the awareness is key, always key. The awareness, slowing down to take that space.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think, regardless of whether you feel that as an empath or take on, that advice for people is really important regardless. I think, even with the people that I work with, and I find it hard, Miranda, sometimes, like people see those practices of journaling, even with things like breath work and setting intentions, and conceptually I feel like they understand them. But what they don't understand the practice of when you continue to practice those day in, day out, and start to build the training around those, just then how important and how, life-changing they can actually be. It's like practicing yoga. Like when you do 1 or 2 sessions, it's okay. It might be a struggle to start with, but when you actually get into a weekly practice, a yearly practice, that's when the real change happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it also has to do with people. I mean, I've done this even myself. You feel like you get this expectation of what it should look like. Like, oh, I
Mm.
have to meditate 20 minutes a day or it's
Yeah.
not going to work. Or, or I have to do this 2-hour yoga practice or it's not going to work. So what you're really setting yourself up for is really not following through, because that is a lot of work to do day in and day out. So actually what I have my coaching clients do is honestly start with 3 minutes. I have them start a 3-minute timer. I have them do a couple rounds of ujjayi breathing, like deep pranayama breaths, like 3 to 5 rounds, just 5 breaths or so. And then do 3 minutes of writing. And a lot of people actually struggle with that. They're like, well, what should I write? What if I don't have anything to write? What if, so they have all these things that they feel like they need to do. And I always have them just start like, if there's nothing there, just write, I have nothing to say.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah. I do
now
the same.
is
Yeah. It's great.
exactly. Yeah. And then if you do that every day, what happens is some beautiful things start to arise when you write. You no longer start having to make it look like something. It doesn't have to look like a 20-page novel. It doesn't have to be like inspiring. It can be a session where all you do is complain. It's just starting that practice of 3 minutes. And then I also say, close the book and don't read it. Like, let it go. You're releasing, you're letting go of some thoughts and beliefs, whatever you're writing. Don't bring it back in by reading it. Close the book and just let it go, and then do it again the next day.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I do the same with clients, and it's such a great practice. Because also what I try to explain to people, it's like there's so much happening in that head of ours that when you can actually give that some space and those stories and get them onto a piece of paper, it actually creates a little bit more space in there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like trying to live in a cluttered living room all day. It's like when you can take a few of the objects out, it allows you to actually perform better within that living room because there's more space in there. And for me, that's personally the journaling is just to take a lot of the noise out of the living room for the day, so I can go there tomorrow and it's cleaner. It'll get dirty and busy again, but then I'm going to clean it again. And I'm not going to exactly. I think the really important thing you said, Miranda, then is don't read it. Don't then just fill the living room back up again by reading it and taking it all back in again.
Yeah, I love that with the living room. Yes, I am 100% right there with you. Letting that stuff go, whatever it may be. And also, I'm a huge, huge believer in compassion.
Yeah.
You may skip a day, and that's okay. Just start over again with no belief about, oh, well, I can't start. I'm not good enough. I didn't do it. Let that go and just start the next day with no belief, no negative self-talk. Because what happens is eventually, after a while, it becomes, for me personally, actually, it is my favorite part of my day now. And when I first started, I struggled. Like, I'd skip days, I wouldn't do it, but I would always have compassion and be like, okay, well, I'll just go the next day and see how long I can go. It's okay. And now it's my favorite part. And I write, like, I have I have times that I go for like 3 hours of doing stuff. It's ridiculous now.
Yeah. Oh, it's I think it's, and one thing I think, Miranda, you're starting with too, it's like you could do the 20-minute meditation or the 30-minute meditation, or you could do the 90-minute yoga. But if you're doing it and it's a struggle every time, and again, this is probably the energetic bit, and you're bringing a really poor energy to those practices, it's a real waste. I feel like it's a real waste of time just to do it because someone's told you to do it, but you're not actually feeling it or bringing the energy that you should be to those practices. So if you can muster up it for 3 or 5 minutes, but bring full energy to it, bring it all of yourself to it, it's almost better to do that than try to just get through 30 minutes of meditation and be scattered everywhere and not enjoying it and just waiting for the clock to finish.
Yeah, kind of like that to-do list, right? What, 20 minutes, check, got this done, but you weren't really present. You know, you can do 20 minutes and not be present, or you can do 3 minutes and be totally present. That
Mm.
3 minutes is so much more healing than that 20 minutes of forced.
Yeah, I'm big on that. And, before when I first started, it was more trying to, I'm very, goal focused and trying to tick it off and do it. And I just, especially when you start to build that relationship with yourself and what you said before, that self-compassion, you've got to let a lot of those beliefs and things go. I just think it's so important. And you see a lot of people doing yoga and doing meditation, but they're struggling through it. And that probably led to my second question, Randall. Like you sort of mentioned before about your yoga teacher really helping you. And I think there's a real bit of gift in that, whether you're working with a coach, a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, whoever it is, that finding the right person is really important. And what I heard from what you were saying before, like they weren't just teaching you the yoga moves, and the practices. They were more than that. They were actually coaching you through life.
Yeah, and they were making me see things that I did not see myself. There was
Mm.
2 instances, I'll give her credit for. I was doing a yoga pose and I was very diligent, very goal-oriented. I always did the poses perfect. I always had to do the entire practice. Like that's how I came into this, goal focused. And I remember one time she came over to me and she whispered in my ear, she's whispered, you're holding or you're covering up your heart. I wonder why that is. And I was just like, ugh, and I just broke down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was this other one, standing up from back bends. My back bends are always tough for me because I hold a lot of my traumas and my experiences in my spine. Always hard and painful for me. And there's this way that she wanted me to do it with my arms overhead. And I was like, can't I just like cross my arms over my chest and do it that way so it doesn't hurt as much? And she just looked at me in my eyes and she just like said, you could. And I was like, ugh, no.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I remember a good friend of mine, she went over to the States and was doing a yoga teacher training. And, she came back and told me, and it was like, she said one of the, and she's a culture expert. She's probably world-class in her field in people and culture. And just, this man that was a yoga teacher taking it, and she said it was so profound, but similar. It was like, he just sort of said, how you do some things is how you do most things. And it was like, and she said, it's like, if you cut the corner on this move, that's going to show up later on in another part of your life. Cause that's just what happens. Like, it's like, you can, and exactly what you're saying, you can do it, but that's not where it ends. It's going to continue that cutting corners, doing things a little bit less, or vice versa. If you do it properly here, you'll take that with you later on in the day or later on in the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing with even with anything, with the teachers, with coaching, there's different times in life that you need different things, So when
Yes.
I first started, I needed to really soften and I needed to not be so hard and to let myself lag a little because I was always focused and goal oriented and finished everything, like had to do everything perfect. So my first teacher was like really relaxed and vulnerability and doing all that. And then as soon as I opened that up, I was like, I knew that I needed someone to push me in those areas that I wasn't letting myself go to. Like I knew I could, but I wasn't doing it. So I then went to another teacher that was like, okay, I'm not going to let you do that. Now it's the time to like dig deep. So having the awareness, and really, I feel like it's important finding a teacher or a coach or anyone that you work with to really connect with them for what you want in that time, and to be honest with yourself in, okay, am I choosing the one that is going to let me ease by and I'm a feel good the entire way? Is that what I'm going to do? Or am I going to be with someone that's going to make me do the things that I don't want to do, whether it be vulnerability or the strength part,
Yeah, I'm huge. I think that's one of the biggest teachings, Miranda, you can get is don't. And often it's, for me, it's don't choose someone that's just like you, who's going to tell you what you want to hear all the time, because it's just more of the same of what you've already got. It's like finding someone who's that coach or teacher that's actually got diversity in how you think, how you believe, how you show up. That's going to to grow you as a holistic person.
Yeah, I so agree. And it's interesting. Again, I always say it's interesting. I need to stop saying that. um, but one of the things that I learned in my human design was that I'm actually here to push the limits of people. Like I can compassionately help them stretch themselves to the next level, and let them feel uncomfortable in a way that still feels safe. So
Yeah.
when I heard that, I was like, oh yes, thank you. Or when I saw that or read that.
So because I did have a bit of a look before we started, and I'm, even personally really interested in this course and what you've done around quantum human design and what it is and what it stands for. And is it, I'm gathering, I haven't had a really good look. Is it based in quantum physics at all?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's quantum human design is the integration or the collaboration of the chakras, quantum physics, these astrology, the Chinese I Ching, and the Kabbalah. So the thing about human design is it's a collaboration of all of these traditional things and traditional practices that have come up through the ages, but yet also includes the modern, which is what I really love because through my own personal practices, I love tradition. I believe in the traditional practices of having a teacher and doing the work and having that depth with someone, like that deep work with someone. But I also know that for these practices to continue in this day and age, we have to bring in some of the modern, like modern physics and quantum human design in the way of the thoughts, so that people will continue to want to do and integrate these practices. So I love that it's a collaboration of everything, and everything actually works really well and beautifully together.
Yeah. How did you sort of get into it? Like, what usually when you come into one of these courses, Miranda, you're coming from one or maybe two of those perspectives. So I'm interested. Were you coming from the chakra perspective or Kabbalah? Like, where was your sort of starting point? And then the second part of the question was, what were some of the surprises when you got into the course that you're like, I actually didn't know as much about that, but that really resonates with me?
Yeah. Well, I heard about it through a friend of mine who is also a coach. And at first, I didn't really connect with it. I was like, it didn't feel right to me. And then it came up again 4 months later. And I was like, well, is this just going to be another thing that I dive into? Because I love to learn. I love to be learning always. So I chose to buy the book first and read the book. And then when I read the book in a week, I was like, okay, well, there's something here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So then I dove right in. And it was a lot. I will be honest. It was a lot. Like the first part of the course the training that I did, I had to take a 2 week break afterwards because it was like learning and integrating so much that I had to give myself the time and space to really feel it in my body and kind of work through things in my body and mind. And then when I moved into the deeper part, which actually is the gates and the astrology part of it and like the life purpose, and that's the surprising thing that came up for me. Like the astrology is so, like, it's all there. It's there for us to see what is our purpose, what are our struggles, when are we supposed to struggle. Like during the Saturn return at age 28, that's a time of struggle. Usually there's a shift in consciousness at that time. 28 is when I actually decided to leave my husband and try to get out of that relationship. So when I started connecting the dots, I couldn't believe how it was all there for me to see. And now because of that, I've actually realized that spirituality and staying in the mindfulness and meditation, like that was my soul's purpose in my last lifetime. My soul's purpose in this lifetime is actually to expand out of that and to make connections more on a global level. So I feel safe when I'm doing yoga, meditation, and all of that. That I thrive there because I mastered that. That's my mastery. But
Yeah.
now getting out, being vocal podcasts, being seen, getting heard, getting internationally, that's scary for me. But yet, because I know that's in my chart and that's my soul's purpose this time, I'm stepping into it with a sense of knowing. So it's making me step into my purpose.
Beautiful. And when someone comes on board to work with you in quantum human design, step us through that a little bit, Miranda, so people can get a bit of a better insight into that.
Yeah, so I love to first get their chart. Like I mentioned, I do the free chart. So I will do a chart for them, and then I will send them a mini reading. And then depending how they feel, if it resonates, there's different areas in the quantum human design chart that actually make you slow down. Like as a coach, some of the times the way that we bring a person at least the way I was taught in business, was to bring them in like right away, get them started. But if you have an emotional authority in quantum human design, so if your authority is emotional, which means it's your emotional solar plexus, it means you actually have to wait out this emotional wave. So if I know someone that has an emotional authority, I will not let them say yes until they wait their emotional wave, so that I know that they're ready. Because what that means is they could be emotionally on a high or like good right then, like, okay, yes, I'm all in. And then 2 days later, they'll be like, I'm not sure if I really want to do this work. And then the next day they could be all in again. So that is the way that they'll be in the program. So I like to wait out that emotional wave. So it's a yes all the way. So I know they're going to do the work, because it's so life-changing that any holding back and not any resistance is going to kind of get you stuck and not help you move forward. So that is one thing I do with the emotional authority. And then I always start first with self-study. And what that means is really helping them see their chart, what type they are, what their emotional wave is, what their strategy is as far as their energy, how they put their energy out into the world, how they're perceived. So I do a lot of one-on-one self-study work with them. And then from there, I bring them into a beautiful community where we do practices together with a group. We do group coaching and so forth, stuff like that.
Beautiful. It sounds amazing. It sounds, really, it sounds like it's got, when I'm listening to it from afar, it sounds like it's got enough structure within it that people that need a little bit of structure and need that structure will get it. But there's also that intimacy and that freedom to flow within the course, within the coaching, which blends both nicely. So is that sound correct?
Yeah. And that's really like what I've been connecting with. Like, I feel like connecting with yourself first, right? Like, who are you? What's your energy? Really getting to know yourself, your authentic self, your defined centers, your definition in your gates. Like, what does that mean? What is some of the conditioning in the open centers that you have to let go of? Because you do take in conditioning from your parents, from your siblings. You believe that you're something, or that you have this energy that you don't have because of an open center. So we work on conditioning. And then after you feel good about that, that's when you can take that next step into the community. Like, practicing together is huge. I feel like consistency and practice in silence, in journaling, in reflection, is so important, especially for entrepreneurs. Because when you're building a business, you're giving and giving and giving to everybody, but yet you sometimes lose track of yourself. So I feel like it's important to have that community and that practice together, and group practices together. And then from there, I feel like, different perspectives from different people, connection with people that are different types. You learn about how, at least for me personally, I felt like everyone was like me. I felt like, well, everyone's driven. everyone has this sacral energy. Everyone can do everything, But when I realized that like a projector does not have this energy consistently, and then a reflector takes on all of these energies from everyone else, and they're reflecting back to us what they're seeing in the world, you realize that we together as a community, that's what's beautiful. We all have our own part. And when we work together, that's what the collective is about. It's not about us all being the same. It's not about us all initiating or doing all of the same things. It's about us stepping into our energetic blueprint and then collectively collaborating together in a community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's so right. Like the quality of our connections and our ability to embrace and I think make the most of diversity within our lives and within our relationships and within our work energetically is huge. And I did a lot of work around eco psychology, and it talks around the need for an ecosystem. Whether that's a person, whether that's a community, whether that's a business, that diversity is absolutely central to its ability to flourish or thrive. And if you haven't got diversity in any ecosystem, whether it's nature or community, it's going to really struggle.
Yeah, definitely. I totally see that.
And it's almost what makes ecosystems, from my perspective, it's what makes the ecosystem beautiful. Like when you look at a rainforest, what makes the rainforest beautiful is the amount of diversity that's within it, the different trees, the different birds, the different animals, the different weather. That's actually the diversity is what separates that from just being like a potato field or a cornfield. And that's
Yeah,
what
and
makes it beautiful.
yeah, and when you start seeing or noticing the different energetic types too, it's beautiful because you start to accept people for who they are,
Yes,
So
yes.
you let go of these expectations of them, and you really just let them be beautiful and who they are, and you accept and love them for who they are. So that for me is that was a gift, because I learned so much about my kids, about who they are and why they were so different. um I didn't mention I have a daughter. My daughter's 8, but she is so different from the boys. And since I've learned quantum human design, I realize why she's so loud and why she talks over people, because she has an open throat. She doesn't feel seen and heard. So I can step back and take the time to let her be seen and heard, you know? It's a powerful gift in accepting people, and a powerful gift in knowing your kids' human design chart as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And from my perspective too, I don't know if it's the same with you, Miranda. It's like almost the flip side of that in some ways is like some people you might see and realize and think and have this idea that what they do is perfect, or that there's very few flaws in that person. And what I've found is the ability to see that they're not perfect, that they're struggling and challenged just like everyone, but also then to be able to embrace them and still, love them for having those flaws, but be able to take them off almost that pedestal that you've placed them on as being that person. So it's like a bringing someone down to a level, and then the people that you might be really challenged with is actually seeing their upside and seeing their positives and embracing them as well.
Yeah, and it's a lot when you start noticing like certain people in your life you feel like have more, like the most energy, and they do everything, and then you realize that they're doing that because they're taking in other people's energy, and that they actually have to slow down, because
Yeah.
they can burn out from that. So instead of just thinking these as superhuman, you realize, hey, like take some time for yourself, slow down, love yourself, give yourself that space. And they're so appreciative because they feel like they have to do that. That's who they've always been.
And how do you, like, with everything that's happening in the world at the moment, Miranda, like, what's your, how important is this work? And, what are you feeling and seeing with the energetic, vibration of everything that's happening and of people right now?
Yeah, right now, so much going on. Well, there's definitely a shift going on. In the quantum human design training, they did say that there's a shift that it has been occurring the last 100 years or so, as far as the way that we live. So they say by 2027, there's going to be a shift of living out of fear, living out of the spleen, is what we say. So the spleen is where we live out of. It's reactive. It's out of instinct. It's that animalistic, like survival mode. And we'll be shifting to more of the emotional solar plexus, which is more of a deliberate choice, like deliberately choosing to take care of the earth and the environment, deliberately moving away from materialism and living out of materialistic things all the time. And if you notice, the last 100 years or so, as the kids have been born, I've noticed, because I'm older, I'm 46. So I've noticed that the younger people understand more what's going on. They're vegetarian. They're talking about and discussing the importance of the environment. They're protesting things. Whereas before that, it was all about materialism and industry and building. And now we're shifting over to deliberate. So I think it's very exciting, honestly, because before Harmony, there has to be chaos. There's a lot of chaos going on, but there's a reason. It's because things are changing. And I personally am very excited to see what that brings.
Yeah, and I think that's a fairly, in the circles probably that we're in, that's a fairly common look around. There's a lot of darkness at the moment, but there needs to be before you can uncover the light, and the light will shine. So I think that I agree with that, and I just think but in this moment, like how we work and help people, because I'm with you. I feel like there's a huge amount of fear in the world right now, and helping people, especially the work that you and I do, helping people work through that fear and get through it in a really healthy way is going to be really important over the next, months to years, to really help them be clear about that. And for me, it's a lot. I don't know about you, but like really being clear about what you're consuming and what you're bringing into your energetic field, like your media, what you're looking at on your phones, your conversations, sort of who you're hanging around, all play a huge part about what comes in and what manifests within you.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. There's been many people that have mentioned to me about the negative feelings and how everything's negative. And because I am not around that, I don't see that. I feel like as far as the pandemic, there's been so much horrible things in this world that's been happening. I also feel like there has been so much goodness as far as slowing down and not having to rush around everywhere and being with your family and letting yourself be with your kids and sleeping in late and working from home. And there's so much goodness too. So as with anything, it's how you perceive things. Are you going to focus on the hard darkness, or are you going to focus on the lightness? And it's not that you forget about the darkness. You don't. You know it's there. You help those people, but then you bring in that light and that love and the support and the comfort and the calmness.
Yeah. Well, Miranda, I think, I actually think that's really probably a beautiful place to finish the conversation. And, again, thank you for your time. And if anyone wants to find out about how they can work with you in quantum human design, where can they check that out?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's miranda-mitchell.com. And on there, you can click on the Get My Free Chart, and I'll run your chart for you and do a mini reading and send it your way so you can start to see your energetic blueprint and see what connects and what doesn't for you.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and really glad to get a bit of an insight into your story, but also what you're doing and sort of how you'll be able to transcend and transform yourself into the amazing work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored. Thank you so much.